how they should be engaged in the process as it starts to ramp up, which is, as you're going to see, it's going to. So there's some suggestions and some ideas in an engagement strategy that's on the table. And there's some questions that the planning office and the steering committee has for you that they'd really like to get your responses to. And they're pretty important questions. So, for example, they're proposing to establish a coast-wide advisory committee. And they're interested in what you think about that and about the mandate of it, the responsibilities, about the participation on that group, and on how to make it work effectively, given that some of you have a lot of experience with different committees and advisory groups. In addition to that, that's not the only kind of mechanism. There's also more focused groups or working groups, which might be focused on a geographic area, or they might be focused on a particular topic. And they're interested to know which topics or geographic areas do you think it would be good to establish such a working group. Also, there's existing advisory processes, existing committees out there that are dealing with fisheries issues or ocean issues that you're all maybe involved in. And it's important to engage those existing processes. So the question is which ones and how. And then, in addition to having kind of longer term or extensive engagements, there's the idea of having workshops or meetings, say in Prince Rupert. And if they were going to have a meeting or workshop in Prince Rupert that involved a lot of people from the local area, what would be the key topics to have in such a workshop? There's many, many different issues, as you know. And then finally, there's opportunities that some of you have already, I think, been involved in, to use the internet as one of the means for providing feedback and involving yourselves in PNCIMA. And so they'd like to know whether you think that's a good idea, and if so, how. So those are the questions. They're on the table. We'll be coming back to them again. But you can see the planning office is looking for the feedback so that when they start to implement the engagement strategy, it actually works for people. So that's the key thing they're trying to get out of the meeting. In terms of the agenda, what we have in mind is start off with a brief update, just kind of progress to date since you last were here. Either you were part of a SACOA workshop a little while ago, a couple of months ago, I think, or the forum last year. So what's happened since then? So a brief update. And if you have any questions, we'll take a few questions of general nature at that point. Then we'd like to get into the engagement strategy and say, well, Neil will present the kind of proposed mechanisms for involving people. And then we'd like to get into the discussion of those questions and how you think it will work or not. And what we found was particularly effective in the meeting we just had in Massey was if we tackle those questions, first of all, kind of in small groups with members of the planning office or the steering committee sitting with you, working through the questions, and then open it up to plenary and say, so what do the groups come up with? And then we can have just a plenary discussion. And then if there's other things that you want to bring up that aren't really related, we can deal with them at that time. And we're trying to wrap up by 9. We're not trying, let's wrap up by 9. That's what the agenda says, and that's what we're intending to do. So that's the sequence. Does that work for everybody? Any concerns, suggestions, changes? All right? Okay, great. Well, I'm going to attempt to stay out of the way and just move us along through that agenda. Rebecca's going to provide us with the initial update. So thank you, Rebecca.
Okay. So we have a presentation we're going to put up too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What if that just turned off?
Yeah, we hit the red button, right?
Yeah.
That's always dangerous.
Or we could just skip it.
All right.
Okay, so thanks, Alex, for that introduction and overview. So as Alex said, what I want to do right now is just provide a bit of an overview, and then the details, the reason that you're here, will be the next presentation that Neil's going to do. But I thought I would just give a quick update intro to set the stage. And so a bit of background, progress to date, and where we're going essentially in a couple of quick slides. Okay, so I think most people are fairly familiar with PNCIMA, but I think there's also a couple new faces. And so just to describe what it is that we're talking about today, the Pacific North Coast Integrated Management Area. So the Oceans Act provided the Department of Fisheries and Oceans our Minister with authority and lead responsibility to create planning areas, large ocean management planning areas. And the one that was chosen for the Pacific coast was what we call PNCIMA. And so you can see the geographical area here. So partway down Vancouver Island all the way up past Haida Gwaii. So it's quite a large area, particularly compared to some of the other lomas in the rest of Canada. And so what it is, this initiative is, it's intended to be a planning process, a collaborative planning process to develop an integrated management plan, oceans management plan for the area. And the goal is to ensure sustainable human use and conserve ecological diversity of the marine area. And the intent is to bring together all interested parties, First Nations, environmental groups, stakeholders, government agencies, coastal communities, commercial and recreational users, anyone who has an interest in the area, find a mechanism to bring them together to discuss and to plan use of the area. So we put up this slide. It's just intended to be an illustrative slide. So you've got the PNCIMA area and a whole bunch of uses of the areas. And I think that the traditional model of ocean uses has been one in a non-integrated sense. You have a number of different users utilizing the ocean in different ways. And eventually the ocean becomes crowded and you start to introduce conflicts. And so this is a great slide just to kind of show you possible areas of conflict. So here we've got the white line cruise ship routes. You've got orca habitat where they're living. Little stars here and here and here are oil and gas. There's blocks of areas for trawling. There's corals interspersed in there. We've got sponge reefs. You can see the hatched watersheds, fishing areas, salmon migration routes, and a proposed wind farm. And so really, this isn't intended to be complete or perfect. It's just a great diagram to show you that the ocean is becoming crowded and there are multiple uses, and there is a compelling reason to develop an integrated management plan for the area. And so just to be clear what it is that we're actually going to produce as a result of this plan, it's a common understanding of the region's characteristics. So I think there's an atlas back there. Is it PNCIMA atlas back there?
I'm not sure if we have any copies.
Anyway, there's an atlas essentially that for the PNCIMA area that's been produced. And essentially, you know, what's in the area, what does it look like from a biological point of view, from a science perspective. An ecosystem-based management framework for the marine environment, which will include objectives for respecting cultural, social, economic, and ecological health of the area. Marine spatial plans. You could have a couple depending on scale and scope. Accountability matrix, which essentially describes various agencies' roles and responsibilities and how they